Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Maddie.
We're wives, moms, hot messes for Jesus, and your new favorite unfiltered besties.
And this is Holy Hot Mess, where faith gets real and messy, but it's all still holy.
So I'm going to need you to grab some coffee
And your chaos, and let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Holy Hot Mess. This is your co-host Stephanie.
And this is your co-host, Maddie.
And before we jump in, let's start off with an icebreaker. The icebreakers are back. So, the icebreaker is, drumroll please. If you had to choose one superpower for your everyday life, would you pick endless patience, unlimited coffee, or the ability to take perfect naps anywhere?
See, I have almost all of those.
Same.
I don't have a lot of patience. But then again, I do. I have to at my job. I have a lot of patience. I have a lot of people tell me every day, Maddie, you have a lot of patience. And then I always say, well, thank you. My husband helped me get that. And then unlimited coffee because I don't care to DoorDash coffee. You will see my hind end DoorDash coffee anywhere and everywhere. Legit. Like I would DoorDash coffee.
$20 for a coffee.
Hey, it's $19.25 and that's after the tip. Don't try to call me out. And then the ability to take a perfect nap anywhere, I can do that. However, okay, here's a downfall to that. Naps don't help me, they hurt me. So I think I would do the nap, but I would want them to help me and not hurt me. Like if I nap, I can't sleep at night. My husband, it takes him a while to get down to sleep, but after that, it does not affect him, and I don't understand how. What about you?
Well, I think patience, but that scares me.
Don't do that.
Unlimited coffee. I do like coffee, but I can get it whenever I want, despite what Ryan may say. First of all, it's because
he's not my boss.
Yes, that too. Yeah. That's second of all. But first of all, my money is my money, and his money's also my money. So there we go. Perfect naps. I don't really care about that one. I'd have to go with unlimited coffee because, wait, does that mean I have to pay for it or not have to pay for it?
That's not specified, so I'm going to make the assumption it's whenever you want.
Okay, well, it's free. So free coffee whenever I want. That's the one I want.
Can I change my answer? All right, that was honestly so good. I love the way that icebreaker was, and I love the way that you thought about that because I never would have thought about something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have a brain.
I knew that, honey. But now, on today's topic is one that kind of hits home for a lot of us. So we're calling this episode When Grace Meets Grit. Because, let's be real now, life can be tough, faith is beautiful, but it's not always easy. So we hear those people say, I heard when you become a Christian, life becomes so much easier. Wrong.
Exactly, because especially at times, it feels like we're trying to keep that Christ-like mentality in a world that keeps testing our patience, our peace, our joy, and grace. It says that we should be kind. However, grit says to stand strong. So what in the world happens when those two things collide and you've got be kind and be strong?
Well, and let's be honest, when we talk about grace and handling a situation that may be a struggle, what the world would tell us to do is not what God would tell us to do. And don't get me wrong, when I mention that, I can hear my husband's voice right now. But what would Jesus do? And he will say, are we talking about the Jesus that flipped the tables? Yes, but that was a different scenario. That was when he found out what they were doing in the
temple.
Well, but that was what it was. He was reacting because of what they were doing. So, I mean, yes, that is a comparable reaction saying, well, which one do we talk about? The one that flipped the tables? But not always. Because let's think of this situation. Would you really flip a table? But we have to draw that line on what we would do because of what God's telling us to do and what the world's telling us to do. And that's what we want to unpack. How to stay kind and Christ-like, even when life gets hard, unfair, or even exhausting. Because if no one's told you, it's going to happen. Because faith doesn't remove the struggle, it shapes how we walk through it. Think about a time that I was working in this one place. Obviously can't say one of my previous jobs that I've had. For me being 24, almost 25 by the way, as of November 18th, that's my birthday.
Oh, old woman in our midst. Your frontal lobe is closing.
I'm going to be mature enough,
Your brain will be fully developed.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for mine to kick in. I'm almost 26.
But for me being only 24, I've had a lot of jobs for a lifetime. But one of my previous jobs that I had, I really struggled, and I actually had to leave because I was being harassed by another coworker. And it got to the point that this I've been thinking about it, and like I'm telling you right now, I love this job tremendously. Like I think I would go back in a heartbeat if this person wasn't there, because I know how hard she made my life. But I also love working from home now, so I won't take that for granted. I've had many dreams about going back, and I think back to the time, and it's actually pondered on my mind a lot because of how much I missed that job, truly. I wonder why that person really had such a problem with me. And I think it was because when I had my miscarriage, because I wasn't going forward with a decision that she wanted me to go forward with, that upset her to a point that she would harass me, she would scream at me, she would degrade me, she would go behind my back and break rules. And honestly, these are kind of rules. They weren't just rules for a workplace. It was legal stuff she would be breaking. And she really gave me a hard time on that job. And you do not know how many times I would tell Sean, and Sean was like, you need to say something. And a lot of the times I let it just slip by. Now, the few times that I said something to my boss was when she was breaking legal laws, like conflict of interest kind of stuff. But I maintain my composure. So when I talk about those times that I would walk into work saying, Lord help me, it was this job because I needed the strength to get through my day.
I remember that. Like, you would tell me about it, like you would cry about it. Is that really what you think it was about the miscarriage thing?
I think it was.
You wouldn't think that it would cause so much animosity. Big word for Elmo right there. I'm proud of myself for that one.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for God, there was times I had to keep one earbud in, and I worked like the public, so I had to be able to like listen and stuff like that. But I would keep my earbud in, and I had a song on repeat, and that's the only thing that kept me sane. I did it for like a month straight, I think.
That would suck.
Very much.
So when you were talking, it brought me back to a verse that I think would fit so perfectly in that situation, and that is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. And it says, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And that is the exact balance that we're trying to talk about here and trying to get across to all of our listeners, is that God gives us the grace to be gentle, but he also gives us the strength to stand firm. And it's not one or the other, it's both. Grace to love people and grit to keep going. And that is how we should model ourselves after that, is to be gentle and strong at the same time.
And you said a key word in there. You said balance. Balance is a big thing. So I'm gonna be honest. I've been married to Sean since 2022. Been together since 2018. It has taken me this long to find a balance between not wanting to be with Sean 24/7 because I'm absolutely gonna lose my mind, and spending time with just myself. And it's a balance, and we all have to figure it out. So I guess the real question now is, how do we live with grace and grit without losing one or the other?
Before I answer you, here's the challenge with this, though, is that if we lean too hard on grace, we can become passive. And if we lean too much on grit, we can become super harsh.
So I'm going to stop you right there. When you say passive, define passive. If someone lets grace take over and we lean on it too hard, what is a good example of someone being passive?
So passive, it means not taking action when action is needed. It's kind of like when somebody stays quiet and avoids conflict or lets something slide even when they shouldn't or when we think they shouldn't. A passive person, they would choose peace, but it's the kind of peace that comes from avoiding the problem instead of directly dealing with it.
And see, I can hear a lot of people saying, like, that's really not the wrong way. But do you know what I also think about? God gave us a voice for a reason. Now, am I telling you that God gave you a voice for you to sit there and cuss him out and have grit? That's more than grit. But no. But God gave you a voice to stand up for yourself. And so I don't even want, my next question was going to be, what's the example of someone having too much grit? But I don't even think I want to ask that because you've kind of just answered that for me.
Exactly. And Jesus showed us how to be both of those things, where we can be both forgiving and also standing on the truth at the same time without cussing somebody out or being way too harsh that you hurt their feelings and potentially hurt your witness to them. Because a lot of the times, especially before I was like a Christian and doing what I was doing now, I had such a bad taste in my mouth about like Pentecostal people specifically because they were way too harsh. And that was just like my perception of it. There's a lot of people out here that aren't like that. But my point is that we need to be both because Jesus was both. And I know that you had gave the example about flipping the tables and you were saying that Sean always uses that example, but it's a good example because it's just the simple fact that Jesus, as perfect as he was able to get to that level of anger to where he would flip the tables and he would become too harsh for them. But at the same time, I think, it was all done in love when it came from him. But it's a good example of a story because it's like even Jesus, as perfect as he was able to get to that level.
But you know what it also makes me think of? So right now, I'm currently studying Nehemiah. I've read Nehemiah before, like I've read over half of the Bible before, but I want to study it more. Like I want to know what's happening each chapter, what's going on during this time and everything. So I love every book of the Bible for different reasons. And so I love Nehemiah because we're talking about a man who, when he heard the news, the whole first chapter of Nehemiah, it's him praying to God. Oh my goodness, how humbling. But let's not even go there because I could go on for days about Nehemiah. But I thought I was reading about Nehemiah 4:17, and so it made me cry. I feel like I'm gonna cry because it was talking about the time where they were building up that wall. They were really mean. They were just terrible. And they were tearing them down and everything. And it talked about how they would continue to build the wall with one hand and then with the other, they were holding a weapon. And I thought, my goodness, like all the time, there's a lot of times where the real world problems are hitting us and we lay down and we may not take it, but we just lay down and we just suffer. But we never just keep doing what we have to do and fight while we're doing it. You need to have God in your life strong enough that you're able to keep building on and hold a weapon in your other hand. And if that doesn't make you want to run across this church, I don't know what, because that was good.
But seriously, no, that was it. And I'm not going to lie, you've spoken about the book of Nehemiah so much that it's just like, geez, like move on to another book. But then you just said that and I'm like, oh my gosh, whoa, now I need to go read that.
And honestly, when you start to make, maybe to some people that doesn't sound fun, but for me to sit down and make a Bible study for myself to breaking down each chapter, what's going on, and even down to an action each verse, each chapter. So for example, this last chapter that I read, building the walls, my action was, what walls do I need to break down? To me, that sounds so exciting. I'm so fun. I never thought as a 24-year-old adult that would be my excitement for the day.
But going back to what I mentioned earlier about Jesus flipping the tables and kind of making that tough choice, but also wanting to do it with love, it brought me back to a time where I had to make a tough choice and I also wanted to honor God with it. And I think Christians have a similar story when it comes from the fact that they were once in a sinful life and then now they are not in a sinful life. So it was when I first got saved and I was still kind of navigating everything, how to weigh my words, especially because that did not come easily to me. And it was with an old friend of mine. We were super, super close. And when I started my Christian walk, it was very new to her as it was to me. Long story short, things were said. I said some things. She said some things. We went about our separate ways. And that was a very tough choice that I had to make because we were just really close. And it was a really hard decision because I knew her like the back of my hand and she knew me in the same way. So it was really hurtful on both sides. And I had to walk away because it was hindering me because she was saying all of this stuff, which she has apologized for it now. Disclosure, she recognizes what she said was wrong. And then I'm the same way. But she said a lot of things that made me think, well, if she thinks of me like that, and she's supposed to be my longtime best friend, how does other people see me? And
I mean, that makes sense, honestly, though, because I could see how you trying to find your way with God and walk with God, and it was just a distraction. I could see that being just a total distraction.
Yeah, and I couldn't really do anything because I was just so worried because, of course, she was thinking those things about me. And I'm like, well, what the heck does everybody else feel about me? So I definitely had to walk away. And that brings us back to the title of this whole entire episode, When Grace Meets Grit, because extending grace doesn't mean that you have to accept the mistreatment. And grit also doesn't mean losing your gentleness. It means that you are anchored in who God says you are, even when life pulls at you.
And I hate to break it to any Christian out there, but if you think that life's gonna be perfect and there's gonna be nothing wrong that's gonna happen to you, you're badly mistaken.
What? Can I get a refund?
No, after 30 days, you do not get a refund no more because you took my verse. But I'm still gonna keep this verse here, 2 Corinthians 12:9. Maybe because we were saying it twice in one episode, someone needs to hear this.
I think so, because I said something that you were supposed to say that I didn't know that you were supposed to say because it was one of your touch points. So it's like, I don't know.
It's a wheel and a wheel.
I was going to say that.
2 Corinthians 12:9. And it says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. So that means God's strength actually shows up in those gritty, imperfect moments where we want to give up, but we don't give up. You keep pushing. You be like them in Nehemiah, where you're still building the wall, but you're holding the weapon on the other hand.
Yes, absolutely. I love that because grace and grit together look like this. Choosing to stay faithful even when you're frustrated. Choosing to stay kind even when you're misunderstood. Choosing to trust God even when it's unclear. And respectfully, don't be a doormat.
That's right. What she said.
Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and what you believe in, but also stay kind when you do it. You can and are able to be firm, but also do it with love.
So when you talk about that, it makes me think about the verse where it talks about how we need to control our tongue. And so we never want to encourage anyone to bite someone's head off, but God gave you a voice for a reason. And it wasn't just to be in my ear. It's also to encourage people. Yeah, good news, y'all, because this new setup, I can't hear Stephanie in my ear, which yay.
And kind of a little side note there, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you can't be firm.
Oof.
A lot of people think that because you're a Christian, you can't be firm, you can't stand up for yourself. Wrong, because you can.
Right.
Do it with love at that point. Make sure that you're kind when you do it.
I mean, but you're right. And so I guess now it comes down to the real question. What does it look like for us right now to live with that kind of balance? To not just believe in grace, but to walk in it with grit. What does it mean for you? Now, that's a rhetorical question. I'm not asking that question for me and Stephanie to answer it because I feel like we just did. We just poured our heart and soul out to you. So the question now comes back to you.
And we don't have all the answers, so we can't give them to you.
Don't share our lives with them. We do have all the answers.
Even though we just gave you some great points.
We did give some really good points. So take that in consideration. What can you do to change in your life?
So if you're listening today or tomorrow or maybe even years down the road and you feel tired, like you are giving your best and still getting tested, this is for you. God sees your effort. He's proud of your perseverance. Don't mistake resistance for absence. God is right there with you.
And it's important to remember, grace without grit won't carry you far, and grit without grace won't keep you kind. But when they meet, that's where the strength and the love work together. That's where Jesus shines through you.
So just make sure that you stay rooted in prayer. Surround yourself with people that encourage you in your faith. And definitely do not forget, every hard day is another chance to grow in both grace and grit. So if this episode has encouraged you, share it with a friend. We are on all kinds of socials. And that friend might be in a season where grace and grit are being tested at this moment. So it might speak to them. It might help them. And it costs $0 to share this podcast.
Make sure to follow us on Spotify, on Apple, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. Oh my God, we are on a lot of platforms. I love that. YouTube now.
And people think we're funny on our TikTok.
Yes, we are trying to do a lot better at being active on our socials, and I feel like we really are.
Yes.
We're going to be still sharing a lot on our social media platforms, whether that's some encouraging words, some one-liner quotes from our previous episodes, or maybe some funny TikToks like we have been previously doing.
And also, before we close out, make sure that you leave a comment, because if we get enough comments, then we can do a Q&A. So make sure that you leave a comment.
Maybe you don't know how to leave a comment on the podcast. You can do it in different ways. You can do it on the podcast, on YouTube, one of our posts. You can even private message one of us. Ask us those questions because we want to answer those questions for you guys.
So now we are at my least favorite time of the episode, and that is because this is all the time that we have for today. It's also my favorite because I can give you a little episode tease. So let's be honest. Sometimes the hardest place to live out your faith is not at church. It's at work. It's the meetings, the deadlines, the moments that test your patience and your integrity. So on our next episode, we are going to be talking about faith at work and about how to carry your Christian values into your workplace, not by preaching louder, but by walking stronger. The big questions: how do you stay kind when stress is high? How do you lead with integrity when compromise seems much easier? And how do you keep your purpose when your job feels like it's routine? If you have ever wondered how your faith fits into your 9 to 5, this episode is for you. So join us for that next episode where we're going to learn how to turn ordinary work into extraordinary worship.
Oof, that sounds good.
Oh, yeah. But until then, keep walking out your grace and grit, even in your holy hot mess.
I'm very excited for that next episode. So, like we end every episode, let's pray. So, if you can, close your eyes and bow your head. If you're driving, please don't do that. So, Father, thank you for showing us that the strength and softness can live in the same heart. Lord, teach us to walk like Jesus, full of grace and truth. When life gets hard, help us not to lose our kindness or our courage. Strengthen every listener today. Give them peace to stay gentle and power to keep going. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Here's to being a holy hot mess, loved by God, carried by grace, and still in progress. See you next time.